Joe Heller's 1961 book, Catch-22, is widely regarded as one of the most important novels of our time. The title itself has become part of the American vernacular and has sold more than 10 million copies. He went on to write 5 other novels, including Something Happened and Closing Time. His latest work, Now and Then, is a memoir tracing his life from Coney Island to today, and I am pleased to have him back on this program. Welcome back, sir. You look great. I'm telling you, 75, I mean, you know it.
I know it.
Yeah.
I stated in the last paragraph.
Here is the last paragraph. I have much to be pleased with, including myself, and I am. I have wanted to succeed, and I have. I look younger than my years, much younger to people who are young, and I am in reasonably good health. My appetite continues hearty and is complemented by a sterling digestive system that almost never lets me down. I still have most of a good head of hair, and probably I have sufficient income and money to go on living as well as I want to, with enough left over. I feel to please my few heirs, Valerie, sister Sylvia, children Erica and Ted. I am in love with my wife, still find other women appealing, enjoy a good many close friendships, and I've just finished writing this book. It will take about a year to be published, and I expect much of what I just said to still be true when it is. And lo and behold, it is.
It all is, yeah.
So, a memoir. I mean, it's 75. I mean, you've been writing about yourself, and Catch-22 is in part about you.
Yes.
You know, for a long time. I mean, a lot of what you've written is about yourself, but this is different in what way?
Very much of what I've written is about myself. In almost all my novels, I'm in there, and my Coney Island background is in there. In the last novel, Closing Time, the Coney Island background is in there very frankly. Right. Even though it's fiction, it's autobiographical. So it seemed to me logical to continue those thoughts in that milieu in a nonfiction book, so those few people who are curious about me can read the book and see where I derived material from the novels.
Why do you say now and then, from Coney Island to here?
Well, which one do you want me to answer?
Now and then.
It's me now and me then, and Coney Island now and Coney Island then. And from Coney Island to here is here this minute. It's been a long journey, almost 75 years. Here I am, and I've traced my life. Yeah. It's not a full autobiography. There are many secrets, my own and others, I didn't reveal. But it starts with me as a kid, and 5 years old in Coney Island, and ends with me as a successful author, at almost 75 years old, here with you.
The first, what a good place to come. The gold ring, the first sentence is, the gold ring on the carousels was made of brass. You often said in your novels, you would say things like that a novel, you know, that you have said that when you begin a novel, it starts with a sentence. You got to have a sentence to get your novel going, as you do, more than just the fact that that's how novels begin, but because it means something.
If I don't have a first sentence to inspire me, I don't even look for a second sentence. The idea of doing this book was suggested to me by a few publishers and a few friends, and particularly my Swedish publisher, who was a very good friend. And he even gave me a memoir by Nabokov called Speak Memory, and said, you know, you don't have to write a factual account, but read this and see it. I read it, and I thought, well, maybe I could do it. And I believe on the plane coming back thinking, well, how would I begin it? And that sentence came to me. The gold ring that was made of brass. Yeah. And it had resonances for me that may not be there, and it may not be there for you.
It is.
My childhood was golden. It was not a perfect childhood. We were poor. The whole neighborhood was poor. But I didn't know it, and none of us there knew it. It was golden, but it was made of brass. We were not rich.
Are you surprised how much you remember?
No, because I've always had a very acute memory for certain details and certain remarks. And my friends are always surprised that I do remember things. And often people, women particularly, embarrassed that they've confided to me things that they thought nobody would ever know.
Yeah. Is it harder to write a memoir or easier than the demand of creativity in a novel?
For me, writing anything is hard, even a note or a letter to somebody. It's very much different for me. For me, writing a nonfiction book, it almost requires a different literary language, a need for precision. A need for less symbolism and more fact, a desire to avoid a repetitious, a linear chronology would be repetitious, it would be typical, and a different vocabulary.
Did you worry for a moment that writing a memoir is not as interesting as a novel?
No.
You could create to make the reader turn the pages
no.
and hear.
It was as challenging and inspiring and as satisfying as a novel would. Since I was not writing a diary and using a diary as a reference source, there was a need for inspiration, for organization, for the decision of where to put things, what things to emphasize, that would make it different than somebody else's memoir. And I found, to my surprise, I found a few things. One is that my family life, the early family life, was more interesting, as interesting to me, more interesting than anything happened to me subsequently.
Wait a minute. More interesting than anything that's happened to you subsequently?
Yeah. The first 19 years of my life, I lived with my family in Coney Island. And I realized that was my real life. After that, it became almost episodic. It became more successful. I'm not saying I'm not saying I've been melancholy and disappointments in it, but the richest part, as far as memory is concerned, as far as feelings being evoked, go back to childhood.
But is that because as a child you start off with such a clean slate, and therefore so many experiences are new, and there's such awe, and there's no attrition of the human spirit?
I don't know. I don't think it's that. I think it's because I had a very close family. I had, much to my embarrassment, a very happy childhood, a satisfactory childhood, and a good family life. And it's become a little more precious to me since I wrote this book and began writing things which would indicate what a close family we had. We were not a confiding family. There was only my mother, my brother and sister, who were half-brothers and sisters, and me. Father died when I was 5. We were all unselfish and uncomplaining. We did not speak to each other emotionally. We did not exchange emotions. And consequently, we never complained. But underneath it, I realized, was this very strong attachment. And I was more secure and comfortable in that Coney Island setting because there was no crime then. There were no real drugs. Marijuana came into the neighborhood when we were 18 or 19. But there was no crime, no fear of violence. And there was a uniformity of opinion. We lived in the Jewish section of Coney Island, adjacent to an Italian section. And the Italians had their cultural beliefs, we had ours, and the economic status of everybody was about the same.
Why'd you dedicate this to your sister Sylvia?
Because my sister is still alive, the only member of the family who is, and she has been, throughout her life, the least selfish person I've ever met, who anyone has ever met. And I'm not the only one who says that. She has children by 2 marriages who were stepchildren, and they're devoted to her. They're grown-ups now, and they feel as close to her as I do, and as close as they felt to my mother, who was their stepmother.
What did you learn? Did you learn things about yourself that you
I learned things about myself, and many things I learned I won't tell you, because I mentioned in the book there are things that I don't want anybody to know.
Well, what kind of things? If you won't tell me what kinds of things do you mean?
I learned, and this is very powerful, I learned that I missed my father, even though I never knew him. He died when I was 5. I have just a few fragmentary memories of him. But one of the things I learned in writing, the most powerful chapter in that book is the next to last chapter, which is about my going into psychoanalysis. But that's not the subject. The subject is my father, the person I never knew and never missed. I found in writing it was very difficult to write, and I said so in that chapter. And I said that somebody experienced in psychoanalysis might think I was having difficulty because of the emotional resistance, which is probably true. And I also found this out since writing the book, and this may surprise you, that each time I talk about him, I am filled with a sad emotion. And right now, as I talk about him, I am. So that it tells me that his death was a more traumatic experience for me than I've ever let myself believe.
The sadness of not having the opportunity?
I don't know if that would be the reason. It's just a sense of loss. I'm cynical enough and experienced enough to know there are many people who have both parents, and the parents have a very harmful effect upon them rather than a beneficial one. There is something there. I think it's, I'm going back to being 5 years old and noticing he was no longer there, knowing he was dead and forgetting about it. I forgot about him completely until I was about 36 years old, wife and 2 children. I applied for a life insurance policy. Parent deceased, yes. What did he die of? And I was struck dumb. I was shocked by 2 things. One, I had not the slightest idea of what he died from. The second thing, by then having read much Freud about psychoanalysis, I knew that if I did not have any knowledge, it was because I never wanted to have any. There was something in me that did not want to know more about it. So then I asked my sister, and I got some of the details. But for 36 years, he was not in my life, consciously, subconsciously.
But in writing this book, you came to know how deeply you didn't want to know and how much you missed.
Well, I came to know how deeply my attachment is to this person I never knew and who was never there. I knew that I had resisted knowing when I applied for that first life insurance policy. And then when I was in psychoanalysis, I was a very good patient because I knew enough about psychoanalysis to be a good patient. I could not get past that barrier. Close to 3 years of psychoanalysis.
Well, so then it failed?
What?
Did it fail then?
Well, let me say, I don't know what it was supposed to do. I didn't go to him for that reason. I've been in good shape, pretty good shape ever since. But in conversation and in dreams and in free association, it's a subject that remains obscure for me, hidden. Now, that's something I learned.
Would you do it again? Go through psychoanalysis?
No. I have no reason not to, but I don't think I have any reason to go through psychoanalysis.
Why don't you write much about the military in this book?
Because there was not much more of my military experience that I felt was worth writing about or would be interesting for anybody else.
For you, it was a positive experience.
Yeah, and I say so. But the actual experience itself of combat, of orientation, of training, that's been written by so many other authors, and I had nothing new to add to that. My military experience was beneficial and enjoyable, almost entirely. Even those last missions of mine when I was scared stiff became a rich experience because there was suspense. It was not boring.
Catch-22 was not an immediate critical and commercial success, was it?
No.
Yet I've often wondered about you if you have been running against yourself throughout your life, i.e., every time you go out of the block, you're running against Joe Heller. You're competing with Joe Heller. I'm competing with Catch-22.
If I were a competitive person, that might be true. I'm not a competitive person. If I am, I repress it.
Right. Yes, that's right.
I don't feel competitive with other novelists or anything. Catch-22, by the time I was doing my second novel, Catch-22 had become a recognized success. And my second novel was deliberately very much different from Catch-22. And in the minds of many people, something happened in Catch-22. They're different as they are equal in accomplishment.
Right.
No, as I slip into my golden years,
about to enter your golden years.
It's very complacent. I'm very content with the knowledge that I did write Catch-22 and something happened, and other novels as well. I didn't have to beat myself, and when I wrote novels, I didn't want to beat other novelists as well. I mean, I stuck with novel writing as opposed to other writing I did, screenwriting, television, right? Because it's very intense and very personal.
Where do you place overcoming the illness you had in your level of things that have been important for you to achieve?
Not important at all.
Not important at all.
No, I was 58 years old when I had this paralyzing disease. I was halfway through the novel, God Knows, when I could write again. I finished that novel. Other than the fact of leaving me with weak muscles, leg muscles and mouth muscles particularly, it has not had a bad effect on me.
Is there anything about yourself that you don't know, that you want to know?
There's a line in Something Happened that the character says, which I think applies to me and to you. He says, half humorously, I know so many things I don't want to find out.
That's great.
I think all of us have at least two brains. I mean, we have two existences, one we're closely in touch with, You and I are talking now, and we know we don't. There's another part of us that's not involved in this.
In this conversation.
Yeah, and we may not even know about it. That's what would be called the unconscious. We each have emotions, reactions to situations that are not logical, that are immature, and we don't know why we have them at certain times.
What's the next book?
I don't know. I've never had an idea for another book until the current book was not only published
But put to bed.
but promoted.
Yeah, but promoted. Joseph Pello, Now and Then, from Coney Island to here. A great story. Thank you, Joe. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.